Welcome to the Paranoid America show. This is Russell Dowden. I'm your host, former publisher of Weird Magazine, Paranoid Magazine, InfoWars Magazine, and host of Weird Radio for many, many years. I am doing our second podcast this week after a good show we had with Sean David Morton last week, kind of giving a chronological history of American ufology last week on the show. This week, joining us from Canada, and I believe he's in Toronto, is our friend Richard Syrett. Richard, no stranger himself at all to all things conspiracy and as well. And so, welcome to the program. Let's just bring Richard right in. How are you, Richard?
Hey, Russell. Wow, it's been a long time. This is like a reunion. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it really is. I appreciate you jumping on. I've been away from the space for a couple of years. I do host a Saturday show on another topic on a local affiliate here on Austin. But, man, with all of the stuff that's been going on with unmanned air UAPs, you've had some a rash of UFO sightings here in recent months and the last year or so. I think things have gotten interesting, and it's kind of gotten me back in the hot seat here, Richard, to do another paranormal show. So thanks for coming on and being there. We've worked together before many years ago. I think it was about 7-8 years ago. We were doing some work for you and collaborating on a few things. So been a big fan. It's great to have you on the show. What have you been up to, my friend?
Oh, wow. What have I not been up to? So I do a daily show up here in Toronto called The Richard Syrett Show, coincidentally. And it's mainly news, politics from a conservative viewpoint, interviews. But it's kind of a situation that two worlds have collided, because for about 23 years, I've been in this, as you say, this space of unexplained mysteries, UFOs, conspiracies, the paranormal. Yeah. But in terms of the conspiracies, things that I've been talking about over the last nearly quarter century, a lot of that is coming into fruition now, whether we're talking about central bank digital currencies and all of this talk about 15-minute cities and you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, and the rise of authoritarianism and big tech married to this sort of biomedical surveillance state. It's all happening. And so now all the things that I talked about on my old conspiracy show and then later on my Strange Planet podcast, which I'm still doing, those are now today's headlines. And I'm talking about them on a mainstream terrestrial radio station up here in Toronto, Saga 960 AM. Monday to Friday from 4 to 6, but still doing the podcast. It's now called Strange Planet. I rebranded it and partnered with Glassbox Media, a terrific group out of New York City. And so that drops 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Wow. And then I'm still doing Coast to Coast AM, usually 3 times a month. So I'm doing it this coming Saturday.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Wow. I'm so glad to talk to you and just catch up with you, and I really hadn't got a chance to catch up, but just by getting you on the show. So this is really a great little reunion here. But man, all of this stuff that's been going on has driven me back into this space, and a brand that I'm relaunching here, Paranoid America, and I feel like with everything that's been going on, this is my rebrand, if you will. You know, you're no stranger to rebranding. We both done it with Weird Radio, Weird Magazine, things I've done in the past, and so I feel like this is a great opportunity here. I noticed that I caught on one of the websites I found you on that you were doing a rock and roll Twilight Zone on Westwood One. It kind of seemed like that may have spawned off of some of that Spirit of Rock Radio we were working on or trying to get developed back in 2015.
That's exactly what it was, Russell. So just kind of a catch up. And I'm not sure when this is going to air, but when we're recording it on May 26th of 2023, this is the 7th anniversary of the death of our mutual friend, Gary Patterson. Man, which is, I mean, how vicious is that?
I've got goosebumps just right there. You telling me that I had no idea that this was the anniversary of Gary's death.
Yes. So for those who aren't familiar with Gary's work, he was kind of the Fox Mulder of rock. He was a rock historian, a great musician. Wrote one of the definitive books on the whole Paul is Dead legend called "The Walrus Was Paul."
Mhm.
Also talked about rock and roll mysteries. So he and I got together, and we're going to put together a radio show called "The Spirit of Rock." And you were involved doing some fabulous artwork, and you did some amazing posters from some of my live events. You're a real talent, Russell, on so many fronts. But so, and then Gary passed away, and so I went to Chris Jericho, um, uh, who had the Chris Jericho podcast,
Yeah,
and
familiar with him.
he did the last interview with our Gary, like a couple days before he passed.
Wow.
So I went to Chris Jericho. We met at the Royal York Hotel in Toronto. Told him what happened, and because I just felt after Gary passed that he would want me to push on with this
Oh
project.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
it became a podcast instead of a terrestrial radio show. It became the Rock and Roll Twilight Zone, and it was on Westwood One for about almost a year, maybe 10 months. And I just poured my heart and soul into that. But it was sort of done in a documentary style, and it just took up so much time and resources and so forth. I couldn't continue it anymore. I miss it. I get so much critical, feedback, positive feedback from it. People miss it. So who knows? One day maybe I'll bring it back.
Well, it's interesting. Last week was only the first show of Paranoid America, and I'm kind of finding old audio clips of things to run during our commercial break. I haven't gotten this where we were going to have our actual commercials when we go to broadcast, Richard. But I found that old audio of that teaser trailer, and I may play it here when we'll probably take one break with you since we got
Sure.
a short show this week with you. But I thought it'd be cool to share that. Just what that program was. It was fabulous voice work that you and Gary put together with your voice talent guy. That was just an incredible opportunity to be a part of that with you guys and to market that. And sadly, just Gary passed away. I had no idea it had been 7 years to the day today.
Yeah. Yes. It's bittersweet, obviously, because he's gone. That's the bitter part. The sweet part is just getting to know him and work with him, and we developed a good friendship, long distance. He was in Knoxville or Olive Grove, I believe, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know Russell, if we have time, if I ever told you the story about receiving a phone call from Gary on a Friday night, May 20. It would have been the 26th at that time, May 20. I received a phone call, and it was Gary, and we were talking about getting this show off the ground, and he was excited. Well, we had talked a couple of days prior. He was excited because he had arranged for a meeting with some general manager, program director at a station in Knoxville who were interested in taking the radio show we developed called The Spirit of Rock. And we talked on the Wednesday night. I remember it distinctly. I was sitting in my car in a parking lot outside of All Saints Church, waiting for my boys to come out of Greek school. We talked. He told me, "Yeah, we got this meeting. It's coming up. It's looking good, Richard." And Gary was such a big, rah kind of booster guy. Then he called me 2 nights later on the Friday night and to tell me, "Oh, I forgot. It's Memorial Day weekend, so the meeting that was scheduled for the Monday with Knoxville is off." And then he said a couple of strange things. One was, "Richard, you're a really cool dad." And then he said something about, you and I were a really big deal. And at the time I thought, oh, that's just Gary kind of building us up. That's the way he was.
Mm-hmm.
And then the phone call ended. And that night on Coast to Coast, Chris Jericho was a guest with Dave Schrader to announce that our Gary Patterson had died. I had fallen asleep. I never fell asleep during Coast. I always listened. That night, I didn't hear it. I woke up the next morning. Dave Schrader sent me a Facebook message and saying, "Richard, I thought you should know since you and Gary were good friends. He passed away last night." And I said, "Wait, that's not possible. I just spoke to Gary last night." So the first thing I did was call Gary on his cell phone. "Gary, what's going on? Dave Schrader just said that you're dead. Come on, give me a call. Stop this nonsense."
Yeah.
But it was true. So I
Wow.
ran upstairs, and my wife was just getting out of bed. My routine was I get up early, go out to the front porch, have my coffee, check my messages. So I ran right back upstairs, and my wife was just getting out of bed. And she saw the blood had drained from my face. She said, "What on earth is going on?" And I said, "Gary's dead." And without me prompting her, because she had seen me wandering around the night before with a phone to my ear, I do that with a cell phone, wandering from room to room aimlessly. I don't know why I walk into the kitchen and then I'm into the family room and then downstairs. Anyway, it's what I do when I'm on the phone. And she said, without me prompting her, "You were just talking with him last night." And I said, "I thought so." I checked the
Yeah.
recents on my phone. I had no incoming or outgoing calls on that Friday night.
Mm.
And anyway, long story short, I went to the funeral, flew down to Knoxville, took a taxi all the way out to Olive Grove. His brother Michael in front of the casket. I was very choked up, and I didn't want to tell Michael the weirdness that had happened the night before he died. I thought it was the night before he died or the night he died. Anyway, I said, "What time did Gary pass?" He said, "Oh, it was about 5 o'clock." Well, it's spring. It's light out here until almost 8:30 this time of year. I remember distinctly when I was walking and talking on the phone with Gary. It was still light out, and it was it was dark out by that time. It was dark, so it had to be after 8:30 when I talked to him, and he died at 5 o'clock. And very quickly, the last thing that Gary said, I forgot this. This is an important part. The last thing he said to me on the phone, because I asked him, I said, "Oh, it's the long Memorial Day weekend. Are you having a barbecue?" Because that's what when I think of American Memorial Day weekend, I think of parades, veterans, and I think of barbecues. And for the first time in my life, Russell, or my first time knowing him, he got kind of curt with me, and he said, "There'll be no barbecue," just like that. And I thought, did I step in a landmine or something? Is there something going on with his family? There'll be no
Hmm.
barbecue. Anyway, I didn't pursue it. The phone call ended. And then so I asked again at the funeral, I asked Michael, I said, "Michael, can I ask you something? The last time I spoke with your brother, again, I didn't let on about what the timing of the call. I said,
Hmm.
he got kind of upset with me because I asked him whether you were having a barbecue this weekend, or well, it was the weekend prior to the funeral." And he looked at me and his eyes kind of squinted and he said, "He said that to you?" And I said, "Yeah. Do you any idea what that means?" He said, "Well, that's strange." He said, "Because the day Gary died, he and his nephew, which was Michael's son, were out driving around looking for a barbecue. He spent $500 on a new barbecue, and they spent the rest of that afternoon putting it together on his back porch. So there was no barbecue. And he was upset when he told me there will be no barbecue."
Wow. Wow. Man, that is so. Man, Richard, did Gary call you from the etheric, or was
Yeah,
there? I mean, there was no. Was that a? Did your phone really ring and you really spoke to him?
it rang.
That's
Yeah, it rang. I spoke with him, but to
wow.
this day, I have to be honest. I mean, I keep telling myself I'm misremembering something. There's something I'm not. There's not something not right about this. And again, the seventh anniversary. There's probably not a week goes by that I don't think about it, and especially on the anniversary. But when my wife confirmed for me that she saw me on the phone walking around, and she said, "I didn't ask you who you were on the phone with, but I assumed it was Gary because at that point we were talking almost daily, getting ready for the show to launch." She said, "I assumed it was Gary." And then when I checked my recents, there were no incoming calls on that Friday.
Wow.
Nobody called me. I didn't call anybody. There was Gary's phone number on the Wednesday, though, when he called me when I was in that church parking lot.
Man, that is amazing, Richard. I had no idea when we scheduled this interview that it was also this day. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
When we scheduled it at the time, I didn't really pay attention, and
I
then I
didn't either. It
realized,
was 3 4 weeks ago we scheduled today's interview.
yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Stay right there. We're going to take our first break. Our guest, Richard Syrett, talking about Spirit of Rock Radio and what might have been with our dear friend, the late R. Gary Patterson. Paranoid America. We'll be right back on the other side.
You do not realize you are in an interstellar conveyance. You are already outside the atmosphere of your own planet. In an instant of your time, we travel from beyond your moon to the surface of your Earth.
Close encounters of the first kind. Sighting of an unidentified flying object. Close encounters of the second kind. Physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind. Contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It is a cosmic mystery, crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It is called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. A Columbia Pictures presentation in association with EMI. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested.
Good evening. As a duly designated representative of the city, county, and state of New York, I order you to cease any and all supernatural activity and return forthwith to your place of origin or to the nearest convenient parallel dimension. That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
This is Spirit of Rock Radio. The stories behind the greatest music of our time.
I says, he's what? He's dead. He's dead.
Iconic moments of rock history, the backstories, the lies, and tracking down what really happened. The death of John Lennon, the manipulation of Elvis Presley.
Elvis Presley died today. Apparently it was a heart attack.
Was Jimi Hendrix murdered? The circumstances surrounding Jim Morrison's death. Janis Joplin, Buddy Holly, rock's greatest legends and their stories, pulled apart and exposed. Reaction and opinion from the people who were there.
A couple of guys, not going to name them because I know who they are and this killed me. They poured wine straight in there and he drowned.
Who was watching them and or exploiting them?
He was the most vocally anti-war of the Rolling Stones. They murdered Brian Jones after that.
Eyewitness accounts, personal stories, and observations.
It's sinister. This whole thing of death surrounded the Beatles from the beginning.
Spirit of Rock Radio. Objective, get to the truth. Refuse to believe without proof.
The autopsy report and things are revealing that the wine was poured down his nose and throat while he was sleeping.
Spirit of Rock Radio. The real stories of rock, finally told by the people who were there.
There's a lot of questionable things.
This is Spirit of Rock Radio. Own it now in your market. Friend Richard Syrett from Toronto chiming in, reminiscing there on our late friend Gary Patterson, giving Richard a call. I'd never heard that story before, Richard. I haven't even spoken with you, man. It's been since the last time we were all working together that I really got engaged on some calls with you before. So just very, very serendipitous. I had no idea, Richard, this was also the anniversary of Gary's passing. But somehow that is, maybe just a way of us, reconnecting, maybe through Gary there. That's just incredible.
I think so. Gary brought us together.
Yep, we really did. I had Gary on my old weird radio show back maybe, 2005 or 4, somewhere years back. And it was good to collaborate with the both of you. But let's jump on another topic here and just I wanted to ask you, UAPs, like I said, all of this stuff's been going on, Richard. It's gotten me back in the seat. I feel like there's a lot of younger generation, Richard, that's out there doing these podcasting. And, I started in 1999. My first show of paranormal aired on Halloween. This is an interesting omen. Halloween Day on a public radio NPR affiliate. I had a paranormal show that aired in the afternoon on Halloween of 1999, following none other than the Orson Welles broadcast of 1938. That was when my first show aired in 99, and I've been in and out of this space. You've been doing this just as long as not longer, I think. But
what do you think with all of this? It's becoming very mainstream now. They're reporting on this on Fox News, CNN. You're at a mainstream station yourself now, and you're reporting on this.
Yeah, you're right. It is becoming mainstream. So we went from newspapers, television stations, the local eyewitness anchor sort of snickering as they talked about a UFO sighting and, little green men from Mars. And that all changed probably. Well, there were some exceptions. I think it was Miles O'Brien on CNN always took the issue rather seriously. Even Larry King later started to take it seriously. But for the most part, it was sneered and snickered at. And then, of course, in December of 2017, in that article in the New York Times about the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Project and Leo Elizondo blowing the whistle. And then we had the Tic Tac UFO video from the was it the F-16, the Tomcat gun camera. That's seems to be the horizon marker, if you will, when everything changed in terms of the tone by the mainstream media. But then it seems to have reverted back a little bit. So it's always, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, a couple of steps sideways. Meanwhile, though, the Pentagon, seems to be giving all the appearance of taking this seriously. They just, I guess it was part of the Defense Appropriations Act. They were required to create this. It's called the All Domain Anomalous Resolution Office, AARO. And they're doing some very interesting work. The director of AARO recently interviewed Robert Salas and Robert Hastings, 2 names that are intricately connected with the whole, UFOs appearing over nuclear missile sites and shutting them down.
That's right.
Robert Salas was stationed at, was it
Great Falls
was it Minot Air Force Base or the other one, Malmstrom?
Yeah, I believe it was Malmstrom.
67. Yeah, and he was underground in a bunker and got reports about this UFO coming down and disengaging 10 ICBMs. They were just taken offline and then it happened somewhere else. So, this, I mean, for AARO now, the director of AARO to be like getting testimony from Hastings and Salas, this is getting very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on backstage, like whether there's this struggle between, because on the other hand, then you have defense officials going before Congress and giving the usual, dog and pony show. Oh, it's just space junk, or it's, I even heard one say, oh, they're plastic bags. That's what people are seeing, That's that. And then by contrast, you have what's happening at AARO. So I don't know if there's a struggle backstage between those that want to disclose and then those that don't want to disclose.
You know what, I think about this too, and I think about how far we've come, and yet we still haven't gotten any kind of full disclosure on this matter. But I do think that the reason we're hearing more from the government side of things, Richard, is it's about controlling the narrative. To me, I think about, whoever gets to this disclosure issue first, whether it's the Department of Naval Intelligence, or if it's the Central Intelligence, or if it's the Department of Defense or U.S. Navy, or maybe it's the ETs themselves, or whatever group that's out there. But it is certainly important for whoever, from the government standpoint, is whoever jumps this or nips this by the butt, before that's the advantage here, is to take that narrative and tell the story of their point of view of it, and I think that's something we always have to be concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at a loss to know which way to turn at this point, and that's probably their main objective is cognitive dissonance, and for us to be totally at this point incredulous. Skeptical, incredulous about everything, which I am at this point. I mean, I can't take anything at face value from anybody in authority.
Yeah, and then I found that over the recent years I've been reading things more and more's coming out about these secret space programs. It makes you really wonder. I've read in recent years. I've read Lynn Kasten's book Dark Fleet. You may be familiar with some of these. William Tompkins, Selected by Extraterrestrials. At one point during the pandemic, Richard, I was reading Dark Fleet, Selected by Extraterrestrials by William Tompkins, as well as Dr. Michael Sala's new book, Space Force, Our Star Trek Future. And I can't believe I didn't start Paranoid America when I was reading all three of those at the same time. But, do you think it's possible that we have kind of as they say, offshoot civilization or a breakaway civilization group? And if so, what is NASA just the, public program for kids?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can't say with 100% certainty, but that makes the most sense to me. I believe that we went to the moon, and my thing is, I think we went there earlier than 1969. I mean, I also think it's quite possible that the film and the photos were staged because there was so much riding on this that they were concerned about radiation fogging the film, which happens every time you go through airport security, or it used to when we had film cameras. So they were concerned about that. So I think both can be true. I think that we landed on the moon, but we also staged the photographs. But I think I think it was possible we were there earlier. I think it's quite possible we have deep space platforms. I always think about what now I've forgotten his name, but the late director of Skunkworks.
We could send ET home. We've already sent him home.
Yeah.
Yes, Rich. Is that right? That's it. Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at is, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, GE Aviation, TRW, Boeing. These were the guys who had the real technology, and it seems to me, from what I've studied, is that NASA was the public program that we were given, and the industrial military industrial complex got the real toys and the real research, and that may have been going on since the 50s as far as we know.
Yeah, I mean, I recently spoke with Darcy Weir, who has a new documentary out about the Apollo programs and UFOs and the astronauts, what they saw on their way to the moon. These photographs that were taken by the early Apollo, I guess you could call them orbiters. They were unmanned, but they were orbiting the surface, taking these pictures. And you have these whistleblowers at NASA claiming that they had, well, I don't know if Photoshop is the right word when we're talking about the mid to late 60s, but clearly seeing structures with intelligence behind them, not natural formations, but structures on the moon, on the dark side of the moon. Astronauts, Apollo astronauts, making comments about things they had seen. I mean, all their conversations, I guess, with Houston were recorded, but for the most part, they were reading off a script, it seems. But then on those odd moments when they were making off the cuff remarks, it was like, "Hey, did you hear that? And did you see that down there? Is that a campfire down there?" All these strange comments that were coming from them.
Yeah. Did you ever get a chance? I know the funny thing is, you've interviewed so many people. You've been in this more than me. I've jumped in and out of different things. I've done sports radio, and I've jumped in and out with this space. But did you ever get a chance to interview that Bart Sibrel from the documentary "Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon"? He was on my show in 2005, and I just was wondering if you ever had a chance to speak with him.
I did. I was doing the show at a different Toronto radio station. It was that was called Mojo AM 640, talk radio for guys. And I had a show Friday night there for a few years, and I did speak with Bart Sibrel about that, and going up to Buzz Aldrin and challenging him and getting punched in the face.
Yeah, he he got a lot of flack for doing that film, and not a lot of people believed, his side of it. But then he raises some really great points, and I'm glad to see Bart actually on YouTube now doing shows, doing a podcast. He gives weekly updates, and has recently written a book called Moon Man, and I haven't picked that up yet, but I weren't. Interesting the way he took that on. But what do you think about what is it? What's it like to be a paranormal late night talk show host? I mean, we have to have the most open mind there are. When you interview all these people over a span of 25, 30 years, Richard. Who's more open-minded than the late night talk show guy that interviews all these people?
You're right. There is no better audience in radio than the late night audience, late night overnight, because I've always said this, and I've worked, aside from the show I'm doing now, which is 4 to 6 p.m. and, the drive home show, but it's not in this arena exactly. Some of it is very conspiracy facts rather than conspiracy theory, but the late night audience, I've worked my entire career. And it's, you have the listener's undivided attention. If you're doing afternoon drive, you might be on the radio while people are driving home. Maybe they're carpooling. They've got 3 people in the car with them. They're talking about their day at work. They might catch a little snippet here and there of what you're saying. But late night is just you and the listener. And I imagine them, maybe lying in bed or sitting in a chair with the lights dimmed down, and there's just the glow of the radio dial. I know I'm making some very anarchic references. Now people listen on their phone, but in my mind, they're listening to a Philco radio on their nightstand. And you have their undivided attention. And people who listen, I think, who are night owls, also tend to be avid readers.
Yeah,
I think they're just by nature more curious. That's why they're up at night. They're pursuing some truth. And
yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's I love this space, and I'm always trying to get back into it, seems like. But what did you think about? I'm going to ask you this, and we may get a couple more minutes here with you, and we'll let you go. Maybe do a part 2 in a week or two with you. But what did you think about last year? They got rid of someone just out of the nowhere, removed the Georgia Guidestone monuments. Did you hear about this?
Blew it up, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. What was that all about?
When that happened, it to me, what came to mind was just, the absolute frustration that people had it with, things like the lockdown and mandates and
pandemic,
all of the coercion that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the World Economic Forum talking about at the same time, now is an opportunity. It's the pandemic presents an opportunity for us to bring about the Great Reset. And a lot of the things the World Economic Forum talk about, and the people that go there with, depopulation agendas, we've got to get the world's population down to 500 million. All of those things were referenced in the Georgia Guidestone. So I think people just kind of connected the pandemic and the lockdowns to whoever put the Guidestones up and decided, this was their vengeance, their time for vengeance.
Well, for me, it begged the question is that whoever put them there things got too close to really happening, or that telling that story, and they had to get rid of them because we were getting with this population agenda, and then the vaccines and the lockdowns. So we could also argue that whoever put them there perhaps removed them.
They didn't hide the evidence.
Yes. We'll start to wrap with you here. Have you decided ever to do a book? I've considered doing a book about my experiences with paranormal and interviewing people. Have you done that yet?
I have not written a book, and people ask me that, and the person who asks me that the most is my lovely bride. I call her the Mighty Aphrodite. She wants me to write a book. One of these days, I will. I love the written. I love writing, the finished product of writing. The actual process of writing is very arduous and lonely for me. But when it's finished, if I write I publish a monthly newsletter called The Inner Sanctum. when it's done, I'm very pleased with it. But the actual process is rather painful for me. But one of these days, if I have some time, yes, I'll sit down and I don't know what the book would be about at this point. But yeah, I think everyone has at least one book in them.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of have an idea. There's a notion I have kicking around because I've been publishing for so many years. Memoirs of a paranormal publisher or something like that. There's something out there. Something in the works that I think I might do that as well. Fire off your website or your shows, whatever you've got cooking. If you've got a speaking engagement or anything, I would like to get you on. There's some other things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to ask you about the Missing 411 documentary that came out. There's the David Politis had a UFO connection one in that last one that just came out last fall. There's some things about the new film Accidental Truth. There's some other things. I would love to get you back on maybe in another few weeks, but
Absolutely.
fire off a website, anything you got cooking on. Tell folks how they can learn more about Richard Syrett or hear you on Coast to Coast AM.
All right. If they want to get into the sort of the paranormal conspiracy stuff, then strangeplanet.ca is the website, strangeplanet.ca. You can subscribe and stream my podcast right there, which is called Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. New episodes Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Strangeplanet.ca. The YouTube channel is called Strange Planet, at Strange Planet Radio, I guess is the handle. And I stream I live stream once a month on there as well, the last Sunday of the month. And then there's the more sort of workaday reality type show, which is weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. And that's the RichardSyrettShow.com, the RichardSyrettShow.com. And then, also on Strange Planet, you can see all my upcoming Coast to Coast AM dates as well, strangeplanet.ca.
Yeah, I caught you on a YouTube broadcast. You had somebody very cool on there. I don't know if it was John D'Souza or somebody. I think you had a recent show or two. I've seen one of those ones on your YouTube channel as well as recently. So keep checking that out. And let's do part 2 soon again, man. It's great catching up with you. Thank you for doing this. As I'm jumping back into this space as things are getting kind of crazy out there. So a lot of respect for you, Richard. I appreciate you being on the show this evening.
Well, congratulations on Paranoid America. It looks fabulous. I can see probably some of your artistic handiwork here.
Yes.
Great talent, Russell. It's great connecting with you, and what a propitious time to connect on
It
our
is.
Gary Patterson's the death anniversary.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that just gave me goosebumps, you telling me that story, and I had no idea that we reconnected after that period of time, that this was 7 years since his passing. So Godspeed to Gary, and thank you for being a part of the show, my friend.
Anytime, Russell. Good to see you again.
All right, good to see you too. There's Richard Syrett. Check him out at strangeplanet.ca. Good stuff from him. I've always looked up to the good work Richard does, and listen to him out there on Coast to Coast AM. He's one of the guys that does it. And does it very well. So thank you for Richard. We'll get him on again in a few weeks. And then I wanted to shout out Norio Hayakawa is going to be on our show next week. And then I'm trying to confirm John D'Souza, also known as the Fox Mulder of the real Fox Mulder of FBI. So we're trying to get him on. So stick around. Paranoid America. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.